They say power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. But what happens when that absolute power suddenly doesn't work? When the one thing you've relied on for centuries simply fails? That's exactly what happened to Cassius Viremont the night he met Hannah Lewis. And it changed everything. Cassius Viremont had walked the earth for 347 years, and in all that time, he had never been denied. Not once. When he wanted something, he took it. When he needed information, he extracted it. When he desired companionship, he commanded it. Such was the gift, or curse, depending on your perspective, of compulsion. The ability to look into someone's eyes and bend their will to his own had made existence remarkably simple. Too simple, perhaps. So simple that Cassius had almost forgotten what it felt like to truly want something he couldn't have. The city of Seattle had been his home for the past decade, a perfect hunting ground disguised as a progressive tech hub. Rainy, dark, populated with transient young professionals who wouldn't be missed if they disappeared for a night or two. Not that Cassius killed anymore. He'd given that up in the 1800s. But he did feed, and compulsion made feeding as easy as breathing. He owned a gallery in Pioneer Square, an upscale establishment called Nocturne that specialized in Gothic and Romantic era paintings. It was the perfect cover, a business that required him to work mostly at night, to interact with wealthy collectors who asked few questions, and to maintain an air of mystery that people found intriguing rather than suspicious. On the evening of October 23rd, Cassius was preparing for a private viewing. A collector from London was interested in a Fuseli original, and the potential sale would net him close to $2 million. Not that he needed the money. 3 centuries of compound interest had taken care of that, but he enjoyed the game of it. The negotiation. The dance. He was adjusting his cufflinks, a pair of antique silver pieces he'd owned since 1702, when his assistant Marcus knocked on his office door. "Mr. Viremont, the appraiser from Christie's is here." Cassius frowned. "I didn't arrange for an appraiser. She says Mr. Caldwell sent her to authenticate the Fuseli before tomorrow's viewing." "Ah, yes." Caldwell, the London collector, was notoriously cautious. It made sense he'd want independent verification before committing to such a purchase. "Send her in," Cassius said, settling into the leather chair behind his mahogany desk. The woman who entered his office was not what he expected. Appraisers for Christie's tended to be older, refined, with that peculiar brand of British reserve. This woman was young, late 20s perhaps, with long auburn hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, and sharp green eyes that surveyed his office with professional detachment. She wore jeans, boots, and a leather jacket over a simple black blouse. Not exactly the Christie's uniform. "Hannah Lewis," she said, extending her hand. "Thanks for seeing me on short notice." Her grip was firm, confident. Cassius held her hand perhaps a moment longer than necessary, his pale eyes locking onto hers as he initiated the compulsion. It was subtle, just a light suggestion. "Trust me. Be comfortable. Tell me anything I ask." But something was wrong. Hannah Lewis blinked once, pulled her hand back and said, "So, the Fuseli. Can I see it?" That was it. No glazed expression. No sudden relaxation of her features. No subtle shift in her demeanor that indicated his compulsion had taken hold. Cassius felt something he hadn't experienced in nearly 2 centuries. Confusion. "Of course," he said smoothly, standing. "Right this way." As he led her through the gallery, past lesser works toward the climate-controlled vault where he kept his most valuable pieces, Cassius tried again. He positioned himself so she'd have to look at him, met her eyes, and pushed harder with a compulsion. "You find me trustworthy. You want to please me. You feel drawn to me." Hannah glanced at him, raised an eyebrow slightly, and said, "Is something wrong? You keep staring." "Forgive me," Cassius replied, his mind racing. "You simply don't look like the typical Christie's appraiser." She laughed, a genuine, unforced sound. "Yeah, I get that a lot. I'm actually freelance. Did some work for Christie's a few years back, and Caldwell remembered me. I specialize in authentication, particularly of late 18th century works." They reached the vault. Cassius entered the code, shielding the keypad carefully, though he had no idea why he bothered with someone apparently immune to his influence, and opened the heavy door. The fusili hung in solitary splendor on the far wall, the nightmare, or rather, a companion piece to the famous painting, depicting a similar scene of a woman in the throes of a dark dream, a demonic creature perched upon her chest. Hannah's entire demeanor changed. She approached the painting with something like reverence, her professional mask slipping to reveal genuine awe. "My God," she whispered. "I've read about this piece, but to see it in person." She pulled out a small flashlight and a jeweler's loupe, beginning a meticulous examination of the canvas. Cassius watched her work, fascinated not by her expertise, though she clearly had it, but by the simple, undeniable fact that she was completely unaffected by his compulsion. In 347 years, this had never happened. Not once. "How long have you been a vampire?" Hannah asked without looking up from the painting. Cassius froze. Every instinct screamed danger, but he forced himself to remain calm. "I beg your pardon." "Oh, come on," she said, still examining the brushwork. "The pale skin, the night hours, the way you haven't aged in any of the photos on your website dating back 10 years, the frankly unsettling way you keep trying to make eye contact like you're attempting to hypnotize me. You're about as subtle as a brick." She straightened up, turning to face him with a small smile. "Don't worry. I'm not going to expose you or whatever. I've known about vampires since I was 16. My ex-boyfriend was one. Well, he became one while we were dating. Long story." Cassius had lived long enough to know when to abandon a pretense. "How are you doing that?" "Doing what?" "Resisting the compulsion." Hannah's smile widened. "Oh, is that what that was? The intense eye contact thing?" "Yeah, doesn't work on me. Never has. Drove my ex absolutely crazy. He'd try to make me forget we'd been fighting, or convince me to skip class, and I'd just not respond. We figured it was some kind of immunity." She returned to the painting. "Anyway, this is authentic. Fuseli's characteristic brushwork in the drapery, the correct pigments for the period. The canvas weave matches other confirmed works from 1783. Caldwell will be getting his money's worth." "Wait," Cassius said, his usual composure thoroughly shattered. "You can't just drop that kind of revelation and move on to authentication." "Can't I?" Hannah packed away her tools. "Look, I know vampires exist. You know vampires exist. I'm immune to compulsion, which I'm guessing is freaking you out right now because you're probably used to being able to manipulate everyone around you. But I'm just here to do a job, you're just here to sell a painting, and honestly, your supernatural status is none of my business." She walked past him toward the vault door. "I'll have my report to Caldwell by tomorrow morning. The viewing should go smoothly." Cassius found himself doing something he hadn't done in decades. He followed. "Have dinner with me." Hannah paused, turning. "Excuse me. Dinner. Tomorrow night, after the viewing. There's an excellent restaurant on Capitol Hill." "Are you asking me on a date?" "I'm asking you to dinner." "That's a date. Call it what you like." Hannah studied him for a long moment, and Cassius realized with a start that he had no idea what she was thinking. For 3 centuries, he'd been able to read people's intentions through their eyes, to feel the moment his compulsion took hold. This woman was a complete blank to him. It was terrifying. It was exhilarating. "Why?" she asked finally. Cassius considered lying, then decided against it. "Because you're immune to compulsion, which should be impossible. Because in 347 years, I've never met anyone like you. Because I'm curious." Honest answer. "I appreciate that." She shouldered her bag. "Okay, dinner. But I'm paying my own way, and if you try any vampire nonsense, feeding on me, biting me, turning me, whatever, I'll stake you with my dessert fork." "Noted. Text me the details. Marcus has my number." She headed for the door, then paused. "And Cassius?" "Just so we're clear, I said yes because I'm curious too. Not because of any compulsion or supernatural influence. Just regular human curiosity about the weird vampire guy who can't get in my head. After she left, Cassius stood in his empty gallery for a long time, feeling something he couldn't quite name. It took him nearly an hour to identify it. Anticipation. The viewing with Caldwell went flawlessly, as Hannah had predicted. The London collector was effusive in his praise of both the painting and Hannah's thorough authentication report. The sale was finalized, funds transferred, and by 8 p.m., Cassius was free. He had chosen Altura, an upscale restaurant on Capitol Hill known for its Northwest cuisine and extensive wine list. He arrived early, punctuality drilled into him during his mortal years in aristocratic France, and was shown to a private corner table. Hannah arrived precisely on time, and Cassius felt that unfamiliar flutter of anticipation again. She'd traded her jeans for black slacks and a deep green blouse that matched her eyes, her auburn hair loose around her shoulders. "I almost didn't come," she said as she sat down. "Spent half the day convincing myself this was a terrible idea." "What changed your mind?" Morbid curiosity won out over common sense. "Story of my life." She accepted a menu from the waiter. "Plus, I figured if a 300-year-old vampire wanted to kill me, he wouldn't bother with dinner first." 347, Cassius corrected. "And you're right. If I wanted to kill you, I'd be far more efficient about it." "Comforting." They ordered. Hannah chose the salmon, Cassius selected a rare steak, knowing he'd need to at least appear to eat, and settled into an oddly comfortable silence. "So," Hannah said eventually, "tell me about the immunity thing. Has this seriously never happened before?" "Never." Compulsion is one of the fundamental abilities vampires develop. Some of us are stronger at it than others, but it works on everyone. Humans, anyway. "But not me. But not you." Cassius studied her across the table. "Your ex-boyfriend, the vampire, he couldn't compel you either?" "Nope. Couldn't do the eye contact hypnosis thing, couldn't make me forget things, couldn't influence my decisions. It actually caused a lot of problems in our relationship. He was used to being able to smooth over conflicts, make people do what he wanted. With me, he actually had to communicate and compromise. Turns out he wasn't great at that." "How did he become a vampire while you were dating?" Hannah's expression darkened slightly. "We were together for about a year. I was 16, he was 18. One night, he was attacked. The vampire who turned him left him to figure everything out on his own. It was rough. The bloodlust, the changes, the fact that he suddenly had all this power over everyone except me. That must have been difficult. You have no idea. He became obsessed with figuring out why his compulsion didn't work on me. Kept trying different techniques, different intensities. When that failed, he got angry. Started accusing me of being some kind of supernatural creature myself, hiding what I really was." She took a sip of water. "The relationship didn't survive. I was 17 when we broke up. Haven't dated a vampire since. Until now. This isn't dating. This is dinner." "Of course." The food arrived, and they ate in silence for a few moments. Cassius was acutely aware that he was actually enjoying himself. Not the pretense of enjoyment he'd perfected over the centuries, but genuine pleasure in Hannah's company. "Can I ask you something?" Hannah said. "Why does the compulsion thing matter so much? I mean, obviously it's useful, but you seem really thrown by the fact that it doesn't work on me." Cassius considered how to answer. "Imagine you've had the same tool for your entire adult life. A tool that makes every interaction predictable, every outcome controllable. And then suddenly, with one person, that tool simply doesn't function. You'd be disoriented too." "I'm not a tool malfunction, Cassius." "That's not what I meant." "I know what you meant. But here's the thing. Maybe what you're feeling isn't disorientation. Maybe it's relief." "Relief." Hannah leaned forward. 300 years of having absolute control over everyone you meet. Never having to wonder if someone likes you for real, or if they're just compelled. Never having to earn trust or affection because you can just take it. That sounds lonely as hell, honestly. The observation struck him like a physical blow. No one had ever articulated it quite that way, perhaps because no one had ever been free enough of his influence to see it clearly. "You're perceptive," he said quietly. "I'm immune to bullshit, supernatural or otherwise." She smiled. "So here's my question. Do you actually want to have dinner with me, Hannah Lewis, weird vampire immunity and all? Or do you just want to study the anomaly?" It was a fair question. Cassius set down his fork, giving it the consideration it deserved. Initially, I'll admit, it was the anomaly. The impossibility of you. But talking to you now. He met her eyes, those sharp green eyes he couldn't influence, couldn't read, couldn't control, and felt something shift in his chest. "I find I'm enjoying the uncertainty, the not knowing. You could reject me, and I'd have no recourse. You could lie to me, and I'd have no way to compel the truth. You could walk away right now, and I couldn't stop you. And that's good. That's terrifying. And yes, good." Hannah was quiet for a long moment, studying him with an intensity that made him realize what it must feel like to be on the other side of his gaze. To be seen, truly seen, without any supernatural interference. "Okay," she said finally. "Let's try something. Ask me a question, any question, and I'll answer honestly. Not because I have to, but because I choose to. Why did you really agree to have dinner with me?" "Because I've spent the last decade being careful around vampires. Keeping my distance, not getting involved. My ex messed me up for a while, and I swore I'd never put myself in that position again. But then I met you, and you were so clearly unsettled by me, so thrown off your game, that I thought, maybe this could be different. Maybe with someone who can't compel me, it could actually be real." The honesty of it stunned him. No games, no pretense, just raw truth offered freely. "My turn," Hannah said. "When was the last time you had a genuine conversation with someone? No compulsion, no manipulation, just honest communication." Cassius thought back through the decades, the centuries. 1847. Her name was Margaret. I was living in London at the time, and she was a teacher at a school for girls. We met at a bookshop, started talking about poetry. I didn't use compulsion on her because, I don't know, I didn't think I needed to. We spoke for hours that day, and many days after. What happened? She died. Cholera outbreak. She was 32. The memory still stung, even after nearly 2 centuries. I realized then that caring for humans, truly caring, only led to pain. They die so quickly. So I stopped trying. Compulsion made it easier. Kept things shallow, transactional. And now I'm sitting across from a woman who renders my primary defense mechanism completely useless, and I find I don't mind nearly as much as I should. Hannah smiled, and it transformed her face. "You know what's funny? I bet there are plenty of humans who would kill for immunity to compulsion. But I've always seen it as kind of isolating. Other people get the easy intimacy of supernatural influence. I get, the privilege of free will. Doesn't feel like much of a privilege when you're the only one who has it." "You're not the only one." "What do you mean?" "I have free will. I've always had it. The compulsion works one way. I can influence others, but I remain uninfluenced. In that sense, we're the same. Both isolated by our immunity to control." Hannah's eyes widened slightly. "I never thought of it that way." They talked for hours. The restaurant filled and emptied around them, and still they talked. About Hannah's work as an authenticator, how she developed an eye for forgeries. About Cassius's 3 centuries of existence, the rise and fall of empires he'd witnessed, the art and music and literature he'd collected. She asked him about the mechanics of vampirism, what was real, what was myth. He asked her about modern technology, pop culture references he didn't understand, the way the world had changed in ways both large and small. At midnight, the restaurant staff began pointedly stacking chairs. "I think they want us to leave," Hannah said, suppressing a laugh. "Probably." Cassius signaled for the check, then looked at Hannah. I know you said you'd pay your own way. And I meant it. She pulled out her wallet. Splitting it is fine, but I'm not letting you pay for everything. Sets a weird precedent. They divided the bill, and Cassius found himself charmed by her insistence on independence. Outside, the Seattle rain had started up again, a light mist that haloed the streetlights. Can I walk you to your car? Cassius asked. I took the bus. Easier than parking downtown. Then let me drive you home. Hannah hesitated, and Cassius could see her weighing the offer, considering the risks, the implications. Finally, she nodded. Okay. But I live in Fremont, which is the opposite direction from your gallery. I'm aware. I don't mind. His car, a sleek black Mercedes that he'd owned for 3 years, was parked in a nearby garage. As they drove through the rain-slicked streets, Hannah asked, So what happens now? What do you mean? I mean, is this a one-time thing? The vampire satisfies his curiosity about the immune human and moves on? Or is this something that continues? Cassius was quiet for a moment, navigating the turns toward Fremont. I'd like it to continue. If you're willing. Even though you can't compel me? Especially because I can't compel me. Hannah was silent until they pulled up outside her apartment building, a renovated brick structure near the Fremont Troll. Then she said, I need to be honest with you about something. All right. This scares me. Not because you're a vampire. I mean, that's concerning, but I can handle it. It scares me because I haven't let myself get close to anyone in years. The thing with my ex left scars. Trust issues. And now here you are, and I actually like you, and that's terrifying. Cassius turned off the engine, giving her his full attention. I understand. For what it's worth, this scares me too. I've spent centuries keeping humans at arm's length, using compulsion as both a tool and a shield. You've stripped that away. I feel vulnerable. Is that bad? I'm not sure yet. Ask me again in a few weeks. Hannah laughed. A few weeks. So we're doing this. Whatever this is. If you're willing. She reached for the door handle, then paused. Cassius? No compulsion, no manipulation, no vampire tricks. If this is going to work, it has to be real. Can you do that? He met her eyes, those impossible, uncompellable eyes. Yes, I can do that. Then I'll see you again. Soon. She got out of the car, and Cassius watched her walk into her building. He sat there for a long time afterward, rain drumming on the roof of his Mercedes, wondering what exactly he'd gotten himself into, and looking forward to finding out. Over the next 3 weeks, Cassius and Hannah fell into a rhythm. Dinners twice a week, long phone conversations on the nights they didn't see each other, occasional texts throughout the day. It was, Cassius reflected, the most normal relationship he'd had in centuries, which made it entirely abnormal for him. Hannah introduced him to Netflix binge-watching, craft breweries, and the particular chaos of Seattle's weekend markets. Cassius introduced her to his private collection of first edition books, obscure classical music, and the art of appreciating wine that cost more than most people's monthly rent. They didn't talk much about the supernatural aspects of Cassius's existence. Hannah seemed content to accept that he was a vampire the way she might accept that someone was left-handed or allergic to peanuts, a fact, but not a defining characteristic. But of course, it couldn't stay that simple. The trouble started on a Thursday night in mid-November. They'd planned to meet at a wine bar on Queen Anne, but Hannah texted saying she'd be late. When she finally arrived, 40 minutes past their agreed time, she looked shaken. Sorry, she said, sliding into the booth across from him. Got held up. Are you all right? You look pale. I'm fine. Just ran into someone I'd rather not have seen. Cassius felt a protective instinct surge through him, an unfamiliar sensation. Who? My ex. Devon. The vampire I told you about. The name alone set Cassius on edge. What did he want? To talk, apparently. Hasn't seen me in years, heard through the grapevine that I was in Seattle, wanted to catch up. Hannah ordered a glass of wine with shaking hands. He's still obsessed with the immunity thing. Kept asking if I'd figured out why his compulsion doesn't work, if I'd met anyone else like me. What did you tell him? Nothing. Told him I had to go, that I was meeting someone. He asked who, and I. She trailed off, looking uncomfortable. You told him you were seeing a vampire. I didn't name you specifically. But yeah. Probably shouldn't have said anything, but he was being pushy and I wanted him to back off. Cassius's mind raced through the implications. Did he seem angry? More curious than angry. He asked if this new vampire could compel me, and when I said no, he got this look on his face. Like he'd just confirmed a theory or something. Hannah took a long drink of her wine. I don't like it. Devon's clever, and when he gets fixated on something, he doesn't let go. Then we'll be careful. Cassius, this isn't your problem. If someone is making you uncomfortable, it's my problem. If another vampire is showing unusual interest in you, it's definitely my problem. Hannah studied him for a moment. This is new. What is? The protective thing. The we thing. You're usually so careful to maintain distance, to keep things light. Now you're talking about my problems being your problems. She was right, and Cassius knew it. Somewhere in the past 3 weeks, his carefully maintained emotional distance had eroded. Hannah had slipped past his defenses, not through compulsion or manipulation, but through simple, genuine connection. I care about you, he said. Is that so surprising? From a 300-year-old vampire who's spent centuries avoiding attachment? Yeah, kind of. 347. You keep correcting that like it matters. Precision matters. Hannah smiled despite herself. Okay, Mr. Precise. What do we do about Devon? We do nothing. I'll make some inquiries, find out what he's doing in Seattle, what his intentions are. Quietly. And if his intentions aren't good? Cassius's expression hardened. Then I'll handle it. Also quietly. No killing. I haven't killed anyone in over a century, Hannah. I'm not about to start now. But you could. If you wanted to. If you felt threatened. It wasn't a question. Cassius appreciated that she wasn't naive about what he was capable of, even if he chose not to exercise those capabilities. Yes, he admitted. I could. But I won't. You have my word. The evening continued, but the easy atmosphere had been disrupted. Hannah was distracted, checking her phone more than usual, glancing toward the door whenever someone entered. Cassius found himself doing the same, hyper-aware of potential threats. When he drove her home that night, she was quiet. You're worried, he observed as they pulled up outside her building. Wouldn't you be? Devon showing up out of nowhere, asking about my immunity, finding out I'm involved with another vampire? It feels like the beginning of something bad. I won't let anything happen to you. See, that's what concerns me. You can't compel people, Cassius. With me, you're just as vulnerable as a human. If Devon decides to cause problems, your usual tools won't work. I have other tools. Like what? 300 years of experience in manipulation and strategy. 347. And yes, exactly like that. Hannah unbuckled her seatbelt but didn't get out. Can I ask you something? And will you answer honestly? Always. Why me? I mean really. Is it just the immunity thing? The challenge of someone you can't control? Or is there something else? Cassius took a moment to formulate his answer, knowing that with Hannah, he couldn't rely on silver-tongued evasions. She'd see through them. At first, yes, it was the immunity. The impossibility of you. But that's not why I'm still here. He turned to face her fully. I'm here because when I'm with you, I remember what it's like to be uncertain, to hope, to want something I might not get. You've reminded me that existence can be more than just endless nights of control and predictability. That's terrifying and romantic in equal measure. I contain multitudes. Hannah laughed, that genuine, unforced sound he'd grown to love. Okay. We'll figure out the Devon situation. Together. But Cassius? If this gets dangerous, if he threatens you because of me, I need you to promise you'll be careful. I promise. And no vampire nonsense. No dramatic sacrifices. No, I must protect her with my immortal existence stuff. We handle this as partners. Partners, Cassius agreed. She leaned across the console and kissed him. Their first kiss, soft and brief and entirely human. When she pulled back, she was smiling. 347 years old and you're blushing. I am not. You totally are. It's adorable. After she went inside, Cassius sat in his car for a long time, touching his lips where she'd kissed him, and marveling at how a single human woman had managed to append 3 centuries of carefully cultivated detachment. He also made a call. Marcus. I need you to find out everything you can about a vampire named Devon. Last name unknown, but he was in Seattle 16 years ago and he's back now. I want to know where he's staying, what he's doing here, and who he's been in contact with. Of course, Mr. Viremont. Might I ask why? He's showing interest in Hannah Lewis. I'd like to know if that interest is likely to become a problem. There was a pause. I see. I'll have information for you by tomorrow evening. Thank you, Marcus. Cassius drove home through the rain, already planning his next moves. Devon might have compulsion on his side, but Cassius had centuries of experience navigating vampire politics and territorial disputes. If Hannah's ex thought he could intimidate or manipulate his way into causing trouble, he was about to learn otherwise. 347 years had taught Cassius many things. Among them, you didn't need compulsion to be dangerous. You just needed to be smarter than your opponent. And Cassius was very, very smart. Marcus's report was thorough and concerning. Devon had been in Seattle for 2 weeks, staying at a boutique hotel in Belltown. He'd been seen at several vampire-frequented establishments, asking questions about other vampires in the area. Specifically, he'd been asking about vampires with unusually strong compulsion abilities. He was hunting for Cassius without knowing exactly who he was hunting for. The pattern is clear, Marcus said, handing over the file. He knows Ms. Lewis is seeing a vampire. He wants to find that vampire and presumably determine why his compulsion doesn't work on her either. Has he been following her? No direct surveillance that we can detect. But he's been monitoring her social media, and he has connections with several local vampires who might be keeping tabs on her movements. Cassius closed the file. Set up a meeting. Neutral territory. I'll speak with him directly. Sir, is that wise? If he realizes you're the vampire Ms. Lewis is involved with. Then we'll have the confrontation now rather than later. I prefer to control the timing of these things. The meeting was arranged for the following night at a bar in Georgetown that catered to supernatural clientele. Cassius arrived early, taking a corner booth with clear sight lines to both exits. He'd informed Hannah of his plan, and she'd insisted on being present. If this is about me, I'm not sitting at home while you handle it, she'd said firmly. It could be dangerous. Then it's good I'll be there to stop you from doing anything stupid. She arrived 20 minutes before Devon was scheduled to appear, sliding into the booth beside Cassius. She wore all black, jeans, boots, a fitted leather jacket, and had her hair pulled back. Ready for trouble. Nervous? Cassius asked. Terrified. You. Concerned. But confident. That's the 300 years of arrogance talking. 347. And it's not arrogance if it's earned. Devon arrived precisely on time. He was younger looking than Cassius had expected, early 20s in appearance, with dark hair and the kind of conventional attractiveness that probably served him well in compulsion scenarios. He spotted Hannah immediately, and his expression shifted from neutral to intensely focused. Hannah. It's been a long time. Not long enough, Devon. He slid into the booth across from them, his eyes flicking to Cassius with undisguised curiosity. So this is him. The vampire who can't compel you either. Cassius Viremont, Cassius said, offering his hand. Devon shook it, and Cassius felt the subtle push of compulsion, weaker than his own, but competent. Devon was trying to get a read on him, to establish dominance. It wouldn't work, of course. Vampires couldn't compel each other. Interesting, Devon said, leaning back. You're old. Really old. I can tell by the way you carry yourself. Couple 100 years at least. 347, Hannah said. He's very precise about it. Devon's eyes widened slightly. 3 centuries. Damn. And in all that time, you've never encountered someone immune to compulsion. Hannah is unique, Cassius said carefully. Right. Hannah is unique. That's what I've been trying to tell people for years, but nobody listens. Devon's attention shifted back to Hannah. Do you know how rare you are? How valuable? I'm not valuable, Devon. I'm a person. A person who can resist vampire compulsion. Do you have any idea what vampires would pay to study you? To figure out how your immunity works. If it could be replicated. It can't be, Hannah interrupted. I've had my blood tested, my DNA sequenced. There's nothing unusual. No genetic markers, no antibodies, nothing that explains it. That you found, Devon pressed. But with better technology, more invasive testing. Cassius had heard enough. This meeting is over. Hannah is not a research subject, and she's certainly not available for invasive testing. If you continue to harass her or show unwanted interest in her immunity, we'll have a different kind of conversation. Devon's smile turned cold. Is that a threat? It's a statement of fact. Hannah has made it clear she doesn't want contact with you. Respect that. And if I don't, what are you going to do, old man? You can't compel me. I'm betting you're too civilized to kill me over something this petty. So what leverage do you actually have? Cassius leaned forward, his voice dropping to a dangerous quiet. I've been navigating vampire politics since before your great-great-grandparents were born. I have connections in every major city, alliances with vampires far older and more powerful than either of us. If you make yourself a problem, I can make your existence very uncomfortable without ever laying a hand on you. Besides, Hannah added, I know where you sleep during the day. So maybe don't piss us off. Devon's expression flickered, surprise, then grudging respect. You always were direct, Hannah. I forgot that about you. You forgot a lot of things about me, including that no means no. For a moment, the three of them sat in tense silence. Then Devon sighed. Fine. I'll back off. But Hannah, you should know, you're not the only one. What? Hannah's voice was sharp with surprise. The only immune person. Over the past few years, I've encountered 3 others. Well, heard of 3 others. People who can resist compulsion to varying degrees. I've been trying to find them, to study the pattern, but they all disappeared before I could make contact. Disappeared how? Cassius asked. Just vanished. Dropped off the grid. One of them was supposedly taken by a group of vampires who wanted to experiment on her. The others, I don't know. But the point is, Hannah isn't as unique as she thinks. And that means other vampires are going to be interested in her if they find out. Hannah's hand found Cassius's under the table, squeezing tight. Are you trying to scare me? I'm trying to warn you. Whatever relationship you two have, it's put a spotlight on Hannah. Old vampires talk. They share information. Eventually, someone is going to wonder why Cassius Viremont, a vampire known for his exceptional compulsion abilities, is spending time with a human woman who's immune to that variability. And when they start asking questions, we'll handle it, Cassius said firmly. Will you? Because from where I'm sitting, Hannah's in more danger now than she was when we were together. At least I kept her existence quiet. You also tried to use her as a test subject for your immunity research, Hannah shot back. Don't pretend you were protecting me. You were studying me. Devon had the grace to look ashamed. I was young. Newly turned. I made mistakes. And you're still making them by showing up here, by asking questions about me, by drawing attention to the very thing you claim puts me in danger. The logic hit home. Devon's expression shifted, and for the first time since he'd sat down, he looked genuinely concerned. You're right. I'm sorry. I'll leave Seattle. Forget I saw you. See that you do, Cassius said. Devon stood to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, Cassius, treat her better than I did. She deserves someone who sees her as more than an interesting anomaly. After he left, Hannah slumped against the booth. That was intense. Are you all right? I think so. Shaken, but okay. She looked at Cassius. Do you think he was telling the truth? About there being others like me? It's possible. Probable, even. The world is large, and immunity to compulsion could manifest in various ways across different populations. And the part about me being in danger? About other vampires being interested. Cassius considered lying to reassure her, then remembered his promise. No manipulation, no vampire tricks. Just honesty. Yes. He's right about that. Our relationship has made you more visible to the vampire community. And there are those who would view your immunity as something to exploit rather than respect. So what do? We're careful. We're prepared. And we trust each other. Cassius turned to face her fully. Hannah, I need you to know, I would never let anyone harm you. Not for research, not for any reason. I know that. I trust you. Even though I'm a vampire? Even though my world comes with dangers you never asked for? Even though... Hannah smiled, though he could see the fear lingering in her eyes. Besides, I knew what I was signing up for when I agreed to date a centuries-old vampire with control issues. I don't have control issues. Cassius, you literally use mind control on people. Fair point. They left the bar together, and as they walked to Cassius's car through the cold November night, Hannah said quietly, he was wrong about one thing. What's that? I'm not more in danger now than I was with him. I'm safer. Because you see me as a person, not a mystery to solve. That makes all the difference. Cassius pulled her close, breathing in the scent of her shampoo, feeling the warmth of her body against his perpetually cool skin. I do see you, Hannah Lewis. All of you. And I find I quite like what I see. Good. Because you're stuck with me now, vampire. There are worse fates. 347 years, and that's the most romantic thing you can come up with? Give me time. I'm out of practice. Hannah laughed, and the sound echoed through the empty street, full of life and warmth and everything that Cassius had been missing for longer than he cared to admit. 6 months later, Cassius stood in his gallery, preparing for another private viewing. The rhythm of his existence had changed in subtle but profound ways. Hannah had moved some of her things into his penthouse apartment. They'd taken a trip to Paris, where he'd shown her the street where he'd been born in 1678, now unrecognizable beneath modern development. She'd introduced him to her parents, a terrifying experience that he'd somehow survived. Marcus knocked on his office door. Mr. Viremont, Ms. Lewis is here. Hannah entered carrying 2 coffee cups, one for her, one for him, though she knew he didn't drink coffee. It was a running joke between them. She'd buy him coffee, he'd take a polite sip, and they'd both pretend he enjoyed it. Big viewing tonight? She asked, handing him the cup. Moderate. A collector from Tokyo is interested in the Delacroix. The Liberty Leading the People study? You've been paying attention. I'm dating an art dealer. Occupational hazard. She perched on the edge of his desk. So, I have news. Something in her tone made Cassius set down his coffee. Good news or bad news? That depends on your perspective. I've been offered a job. Head authenticator for a new museum opening in London. It's a 3-year contract, very prestigious, ridiculous salary. Cassius felt his carefully controlled world tilt slightly. London. London. I'd have to move. Leave Seattle. She was watching him carefully. I haven't accepted yet. Wanted to talk to you first. 347 years, and Cassius had never had to navigate this particular scenario. The human he cared about potentially moving across an ocean for her career. You should take it, he heard himself say. Really? Just like that? No discussion about long-distance relationships or asking me to stay. Hannah, it's an incredible opportunity. I would never ask you to sacrifice your career for me. Okay, but what if I want you to ask? What if I want to know that you care enough to at least have a conversation about it? Cassius stood, moving around the desk to face her. Of course I care. I care so much that the thought of you being in London while I'm here makes me feel like I'm missing a vital organ. But I also care enough to want what's best for you, even if that's not what's best for me. Hannah's expression softened. You really are out of practice with the romance thing, aren't you? Apparently. Cassius. Here's the thing about relationships. They're supposed to be a partnership, which means we make decisions together. So instead of you nobly sacrificing your happiness for my career, how about we talk about actual solutions? Such as, you've been in Seattle for 10 years. Maybe it's time for a change of scenery. London has an excellent art scene. I bet you could open a gallery there. Or sell to collectors remotely. You're immortal. You can live anywhere. The suggestion was so simple, so obvious, that Cassius wondered why he hadn't thought of it himself. Centuries of solitary existence had conditioned him to think in terms of his own unchanging routine, never considering that he could simply adapt. You want me to move to London with you. I want us to figure out what works for both of us. If that means London, great. If it means long distance for a while, we'll manage. If it means I turn down the job and find something here, that's an option too. But we decide together. Cassius pulled her close, marveling once again at how this impossible woman had managed to reshape his entire worldview. London, then. Together. You're sure? It's a big change. I've lived in the same city for a decade. Before that, the same house for 50 years. Perhaps it's time I learned to embrace change. He smiled. Besides, I rather like the idea of waking up, metaphorically speaking, next to you every night. That's better. The romance thing is improving. I have an excellent teacher. Hannah kissed him, and Cassius thought about how far he'd come from that night in October when she'd first walked into his gallery. How she'd stripped away his compulsion, his control, his carefully maintained distance, and replaced it all with something infinitely more valuable: choice. The choice to trust. The choice to be vulnerable. The choice to build a life with someone who saw him exactly as he was, immortal, powerful, and occasionally absurd, and loved him anyway. One condition, Hannah said, pulling back slightly. Name it. You have to stop saying 347 years every time someone asks your age. In London, you're just going to say very old, and leave it at that. Absolutely not. Precision matters. You're impossible. And yet you're moving across an ocean with me. Clearly I have terrible judgment. The worst. They stood there in his office, surrounded by paintings worth millions, artifacts collected over centuries, the accumulated weight of immortal existence. And Cassius realized that none of it mattered as much as the woman in his arms who couldn't be compelled, couldn't be controlled, couldn't be anything other than exactly who she was. Immune to his compulsion, yes. But he found he was far from immune to her. And after 347 years of isolation, that felt exactly right.